thank you, Mihir, for taking time out and joining once again, after some time, a session with our agents. I can tell you our agents always look forward to interacting with you, and this is a great opportunity for them. So, what we would like to do today is we have created this opportunity for all of us to engage and gather some information from our CIO. All of you must be meeting your customers right now. I'm sure there are questions that your customers are asking. It would be not very uncommon for a customer who is or a prospect who is who is uncertain about the future, uncertain about the continuation of income, uncertain about the business scenario, to ask you certain questions about how do we see how the life insurance industry future looks like, how do we see the future from a economy perspective. So it'll not be uncommon for customers to expect such answers from us. In fact, we have seen that in these times, uh, customers are looking, while they may not want to meet us physically, customers are looking to gather information, more information around how they can protect their families and how they can make safe investments. So this session is to help you gather some information from none other than our chief investment officer, our director and chief investment officer, Mihir. So this session, Mihir will share a few thoughts with you, and then we will have certain questions. We have already got some questions from our agent advisors, which I will, on behalf of you, I'll ask Mihir, and Mihir will share his inputs. And post that, if you can type out your questions on the chat, we will pick up some questions and we will share with Mihir so that Mihir can answer those questions. At the end of this session, you would be any questions that you have, you would have answers to those questions, and you will have a very good understanding of how our CIO is looking at the market, how what is his confidence level about how things are there in in the both in stock markets and how our other investments are doing. He will share that with you. And if there are any questions that for paucity of time are not answered, as Kapil said, if you write those questions to us, we will certainly get back to you with an FAQ. Okay, so that's the objective of the call. Uh, I'll just give you a quick update on behalf of the organization how we have done. I will not take long. As I was sharing, um, this pandemic situation has certainly created a tailwind around protection, and I also know around health. So people are looking more, they are looking forward to people who were thinking about protection are now buying protection. So if you see, our protection policies have gone up by about 57%. And every second policy that Max Life is selling is now a protection policy. Max Life has done very well in the first quarter, and we would like to thank you to all our agent advisors, along with our employees. Amongst all the private players, Max Life has done really well, and we have moved to number 3 position in June, along with a growth in our market share. So today, in private insurance industry, in the private industry, every ninth policy, if we see it that way, every ninth policy being sold is a Max Life policy. Okay, so we are very well placed, and it has happened because of many things that Max Life has done. But at an overall level, all of us should feel good, take pride, and have confidence that we are working for an organization which is doing everything possible to make virtual engagement uh, possible, to make virtual engagement more effective, and to help you with the tools, digital tools, with enablers, so that you can reach out to your customers better. So this is what we've been doing, and the results are in front of you. This is just a fact sheet of the organization. You can see that almost all the numbers that you can see here will build trust, with our customer, be it our solvency ratio, overall the size of the fund, the AUM that we are having, our claims paid ratio. Okay, almost everything that you can see here can help build trust. We would request all of you to have this fact sheet, to have these data points with you, because remember, it is in these times, I'm once again underlining, it is the trust factor that will play a big role in convincing a prospect to become a customer. Uh, Agency has also done well. Agency has in quarter one, along with the organization, agency, which is you and I, we have performed pretty well. Our protection has grown very well. Our sum assured, this has been a focus area of Max Life ever since last year. Our sum assured has grown. Our our persistency, our persistency is one area that we have to work. Our sales has grown. So we were quite. Uh, I have no hesitation in saying that we were quite worried that how will we negotiate this lockdown situation when we are not able to meet our agents, not able to meet our employees, not able to meet our customers. But thanks to the digital journey that Max Life started years back, some of the decisions that we took and some of the investments that we made a few years back, I think when we look back, uh, I think those decisions are proving to be a savior for us today. And the reason for us to take those decisions, uh, uh, it could not have been it could not have been higher or more important. So I think the organization saw, we didn't see COVID coming, but we clearly saw that digital is the future. And in these last 100 days, I can tell you that we worked very hard to help uh, our agent advisors, our employees, not only connect with our customers, but to upskill themselves, to learn. And that is the endeavor. And today's initiative is one more such initiative where we believe that, you will not only engage and listen to our CEO, CIO, but you would also take home information, you will take home insights, you will take home learning, which is going to help you. So I'm quite excited. I'm quite excited, and I'm looking forward to what our CIO is going to share with all of us. And I'm very sure that with this information, as we go and meet our customers, we will be able to create a higher degree of trust with them and be able to address their concerns about their investments in a far better manner. So this session is for our CIO. I will not take longer. I would now give it back to Ayaz. Ayaz, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for the lovely introduction. And like always, sparing time and coming and talking to all of us. So a little bit about Mihir, who joins us from Mumbai. And Mihir, I hope all is well and all is doing fine. It's great to see you here, right? So just a little bit about Mihir. Mihir is Director and Chief Investment Officer with Max Life Insurance. And he's responsible for creating the investment strategy and leading all aspects of the company's fund management and fund performance, right? He's a mechanical engineer from MSU Baroda and also an MBA from IIM Lucknow. He is also a chartered financial analyst from the respected CFA Institute in the United States of America, with 25 plus years of in-depth experience across asset classes, including equity, fixed income, and hybrid funds. And to top it all, you'll most probably catch him at CNBC TV 18 one of those days. If you switch on the television, you'll see him having a conversation with some of the leading analysts in the country. He's also managed leading mutual funds and sovereign wealth funds with Max Life, now been with 6 years overall, launched and managed a wide gamut of funds from mid-cap to multi-cap to sector funds and thematic funds. That's just a little bit about Mihir overall. I will now invite him over and I will now request Mihir to take the session forward. Mihir, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Bahut bahut shukriya.
Great. Thank you so much, Ayaz and Shiv, for the kind words. And good evening. Welcome, everyone. It's always a pleasure to see our people, especially now that we have this very convenient video conferencing facility. World seems much smaller, and people seem much closer, even though you might be in different cities and different towns. So I think technology is a blessing, and I think we need to thank everybody from Sunil Mittal to Mukesh Ambani for making bandwidth so cheap for us that we are able to interact with each other so seamlessly from all across the country. So thanks and welcome everyone. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. I will try to give you a few. I'll cover a few points today. One is, since we don't interact that often, though we would like to, I'll dwell a couple of minutes on, how we manage the funds that you and your clients, subscribe to or give to us to manage for the long term, both in the equity piece, the fixed income piece, etc. So the broad philosophy of what Max Life stands for when we talk about fund management. I will tell you about asset class returns, asset class expectations, and of course, we will discuss the market situation and the economic situation in the global and the local perspective. So we'll try to cover this within a reasonable amount of time. And of course, as mentioned, we will take Q&A at the end of this. So I will share my screen and see how this goes. Ayaz, is my screen visible?
Yes, Mayor, the screen is visible. Let's just go on to slideshow. Yeah, absolutely fine.
Excellent. So let's just spend a couple of minutes. I won't take too much time, but you need to know, and your clients need to know how we manage our money. So, insurance companies invest across a wide variety of asset classes. We invest in fixed income, of course. We invest in fixed income, we invest in equities, and we also invest in alternate asset classes like real estate. We invest in AIFs, we invest in InvITs and REITs, though of course they are much smaller pieces of the overall chain. But the idea is to have as much of a diversification in the portfolio as possible, so that the long-term money that we have generates optimal long-term returns for our customers. The biggest asset classes, of course, are fixed income and equities. So I will not touch upon the smaller asset classes like real estate, etc. But suffice it to say that, even in the real estate portfolio that we have, which is a small portion of the overall assets, it's a very high quality portfolio. These are commercial assets which yield us good income, which we then, use to generate returns and, of course, deliver the bonuses and returns that we declare. So let's talk about the exciting part, so to say, the equities part. Somebody is, kind of noting the screen. Ayaz, if we can.
We will get it removed. Mihir Krishna will remove it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the exciting part, as I said, the equities piece. We have a large portfolio of fixed income and we have a smaller portfolio of equities. The fixed income portfolio of the fixed income part of our overall portfolio gives us the recurring income, the stability and the visibility. And as we say, the asset liability management is done mostly by the fixed income piece. So the long-term policies that we write are to a great extent, backed by very high quality assets, very high quality fixed income assets like government securities, AAA corporate bonds, basically to make sure that the 20, 30, 40-year policies we have written are backed up by adequate assets which are yielding your 7, 8, 9% that we need to generate to declare the bonuses and meet the claims, etc. So that's the fixed income part. The equity portion is again a very long-term investment for us. It's what is the icing on the cake. The equity portion gives us the trigger, the extra zip, so to say, so that we can deliver even more superior returns, because we know that while in the short term equities is a very volatile asset class, in the long term it actually gives you very good returns, and I have a couple of slides on that. So while in the long term we expect fixed income to generate anywhere between 7 to 9%, equities we expect to generate anywhere between 11 to 13%, and that's what the equities portion also has done for us. But when we talk about equities, we have to be very careful. So we are very clear, and it's very simple to say but difficult to execute. We are one of the very few insurance companies, or even fund houses for that matter, mutual fund, who have a very clearly articulated investment philosophy, both for equities and for fixed income. So when we talk about equities, we are talking about buying fundamentally good quality businesses at attractive valuations, because we ultimately believe that it's the profit growth that will give you the stock price returns. So we aim to deliver superior returns by investing in growth companies at a reasonable price. So there are three things which are important, which you should take away and tell to your customers. One is, we are investing based on fundamentals. We are not speculating in the market. We are investing. We are assessing the quality of the business. We are understanding what the company does. We understand the cash flows of the company, the investment plans of the company, and try to judge in the next 3, 5, 10 years, what's the kind of profit growth that a company is likely to generate. Quality. Quality means quality of management, quality of cash flows. Ultimately, you may have a very good, very large company, but if the management is shady, if the management does not have a good track record of treating shareholders as a track record of siphoning of money, it's not going to reflect in the profits of the company, because it will go somewhere else, not to the company. It also leads to money siphoning, we have seen, and a lot of companies like Satyam, etc., have gone bust also because of frauds. So we need to also be very careful about quality, and we have very robust processes which actually do a lot of qualitative assessment on the balance sheet, on the cash flows, on the corporate governance, etc., on the companies. And then the final is, what is the kind of growth that the company expects. So profit growth for the next 3 to 10 years. And most importantly for us is that profit growth has to come at a reasonable price. So we don't buy stocks which are very expensive. We try to buy stocks when they are just about to start, going up in terms of profit growth. The market has not probably yet recognized the potential of that stock, and we try to then ride that so that we get growth not only in line with profits growth, but also in terms with valuation upside. So growth at a reasonable price basically is the philosophy that we use for picking equities. And we are very actively managing our portfolio. We kind of we are looking at our portfolio daily, in and out, for news flows, changes in fundamentals, changes in stock prices, and we keep fine-tuning our portfolio depending on the relative attractiveness. On the fixed income side, we have this big piece of traditional funds. As you know, we are the largest, one of the largest traditional fund, the power fund in the country, almost 40,000 crores. The traditional funds are managed very, very strictly. It's almost like a bank. ALM is asset liability management. So when you give us the policy money upfront and write the first premium for us, we know that this customer is now going to give us cash flows for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because that's the premium that is going to pay us. Now, I have two objectives now. Of course, the first year premium is definitely to be invested, but I also need to plan for the future premiums to be invested. And that's where, this huge chunk of asset liability management comes in. So one is premiums received today, investing the future premiums, and of course, planning for the bonuses and the mortality claims, etc., that are going to come. So the actuarial team, the investments team, the products team, all work extremely close together. We have these 30, 40 lakh policies that we return. We know the kind of liabilities that we have written for these policies. We know the kind of premiums that are going to come in for the next 10, 20, 30 years in these policies. And each of these is modeled as statistically, actually very sophisticated science. And we know the cash flows that we need to generate in our portfolio for the next 5, 20, 30, 40 years. So ALM, asset liability management, is like a bank where we are ensuring that whatever claims are going to happen, whatever bonuses are to be paid in the future, are adequately backed and adequately planned for. So it's one of the most robust processes that we have as far as the industry is concerned. We invest in long-term government securities, high-quality bonds, and of course, a small portion into equities. We believe in security first. We do not want to take any credit exposure. So we are basically investing only in AA and AAA paper. And in fact, AAA is almost 95 or more than 95% of the total portfolio. So we are not taking credit risk. We are not lending recklessly or anything like that. We are basically investing safely and in line with the overall asset liability management. In the unit link funds, again, we don't take too much credit exposure. There we change the duration of the portfolio and basically try to ride the interest rate cycle, which I will show in subsequent slide, to basically make sure that we get returns which are ahead of the overall stock, interest rates prevailing in the economy. If you look at our power fund track record, of course, we know that the kind of bonuses we were declaring over the last 20 years, very consistent. absolutely delighting the customer, and investing in, and you know, the policy that we have to declare bonuses again very fair to the customer, very transparent that we have. On the ULIP side, of course, which is sometimes more visible, but the smaller portion, our funds are consistently performing in line, consistently performing better than the benchmark and better than the peer group over the long term. In fact, we don't need to say this. The external agency Morningstar, which basically rates mutual funds and ULIPs over a long-term period, has ranked most of our funds 4-star and 5-star. So the equity funds, the balanced fund, the mixed asset funds, the mid-cap fund, all of the funds are rated, most of the funds are rated 4-star or 5-star, and some of them, the smaller ones, are rated 3-star. So it basically shows that even the external evaluation compares us with hundreds of other funds, including mutual funds, has given this testimony that our funds are managed in a very prudent way, in a very active way, and beating the benchmarks and the peer group consistently. Now, so that was basically a key takeaway for you is that Max Life has a very clearly articulated investment strategy. On the fixed income side, we do not take credit risks. Most of it is run as per the asset liability requirements of the company. And within that, of course, we use very sophisticated hedging techniques, etc., to make sure that we deliver what we have promised. On the equities piece, we invest in very good quality businesses at a reasonable price and try to make sure that we give returns better than the Nifty or whatever the benchmark is. So the clarity of thought and the clarity and the sophistication of the process is something that you need to be aware of, and you can confidently tell your clients that your money is being managed in a very professional and scientific way. Now let's talk about the markets, the more exciting part. Before I talk about the current market and economic situation, let me dwell a little bit on broadly what equities stand for. Basically, as I said, stock prices, companies are a function of profits. Essentially, even if you look at a company, ultimately in the long term, if you see, the stock price reflects the growth in profits. And what is the Nifty or the Sensex? It's just a benchmark which comprises of all the companies. So the top 50 companies in the country, for example, are reflected as per their market cap in the Nifty benchmark. So if you look at the Nifty returns and movement over the last 20 years, let's look at a very long period. It has given you a return of almost 700%, 800% over the last 20 years. And if you see the kind of profits that the companies have generated have also risen to that extent. So the yellow chart that the yellow graph you see is the familiar chart of the Nifty, which has gone up very consistently over the long term. There are always corrections. There are of course corrections along the way, but if you see, those corrections invariably are followed by resumption of the rise. So this volatility you see is these sharp corrections, but that's a part of the asset class. It's the nature of the beast. When you want higher returns, you have to bear with a little bit of volatility. So that this chart, this yellow chart we know and we see every day on CNBC and wherever websites, very familiar. What we don't see is that surprisingly, the yellow chart exactly almost tracks the profits. So if I'm here, I've just added the yearly profits of the Nifty 50 companies over the long term, and if you see, the Nifty follows profits. There might be overshoot sometimes, like in phases like this where the markets go a bit ahead of profits, and cases like this where the markets go below the profits. But if you look at the long-term trend, ultimately stock prices and the Nifty catches up with the profitability of the companies underlying. So what we basically need to keep track is whether corporate India is likely to deliver higher profits next year and the year after that, or at least near the next 3 to 5 years. That's the call one takes when we talk about generating profits from the equities market. So, long-term asset allocation is what you should keep in mind. And ultimately, in a country like India, with a young, growing economy, in a good year, we grow at 8%. In a bad year, we grow at 4-5%, but it's a growing economy. So in some years, corporate profits will grow very fast. In some years, corporate profits will grow slower. But ultimately, because we are a young economy with our demographics and dynamics, we are going to grow. You can't take that away from a young country like India. So essentially, as long as we are confident that companies in India will keep on growing their profits, the Nifty and the stock markets will follow. That's the key lesson that we need to take away when we are talking about equities as an asset class. If you look at the long-term returns, the same chart or the longer term, sometimes when you look at the shorter term, you think it's too volatile. But if I look at the last 20 years, for example, just let me show you the last 20 years. Yeah, if you look at the 20-year returns from the Nifty, it's about 777%, which is about 11.5 or 11.6% annualized. And this is ex-dividend. So you add 1.5% of dividend. So we are talking about almost 13% total returns from the Nifty over a long period of time. That's really much better than the 7-8% that we get from fixed income. So while we have the riskiness of equity in the short term, in the long term, it very clearly delivers much superior returns. So that was 20 years. Let's look at the last, say 13-14, since the new government came in. Similar returns, 11.25%. If you look at the last 10 years, it's similar. Even if you had bought at the peak of 2010, when the markets had really gone up sharply, even then, even if you had bought at the peak, you would have still made about 6 to 7% pre-dividend. So 8 to 9% after dividend, after including dividend. So essentially, if you stick to equities, if you stick to your asset allocation to equities, you will make superior returns. And that's the philosophy by which we have equities in the ULIP funds, and equities also in the some portion of equities also in a traditional fund, because it gives you that long-term return, which is what we are here for. Coming to fixed income markets, again, we get a lot of questions on, fixed deposit rate today. Bank SBI is giving 3-4% only. How will you declare bonuses, etc. Again, there are long-term perspective helps. So if you look at the long term again for India, I don't know where the annotations are coming from. If you look at the long term in India, I will just, as a representative, I'm just using the 10-year bond yields in India, because that's a very actively traded bond. Bond yields in India used to be very high, say 20 years back, about almost 12%. And then you had this big, drop. It went down all the way to about 5-6%. And then, it's been broadly in a range of 6 to 9%. That's the long-term average that we can see. So as I said, even though rates today might look low, they were not always low. They always move in this cycle of 6 to 9%. And that's again a function of a growing economy. The faster the economy grows, the younger the population is. Basically, you are always short of capital. And when you are short of capital, because you need capital to grow, because you need capital for the consumers to consume, interest rates cannot go down below a certain point. So if you look at the long-term trend, this is the red line, the red line that I marked. The long-term trend is somewhere between 7 to 8%. And even if we look at the US situation, while interest rates in the US also have come down, this is the US 10-year bond yield, has come down from 4% to 0.6%. But the differential between the Indian interest rates and the US interest rates always remains. So, India, because it has higher inflation, because it has faster growth, will always have interest rates which are higher, and that differential between us and the developed markets will continue. So I think our view is that yes, interest rates are low currently, but they may go down by 0.25 or 0.4% more, but then ultimately they will rebound to somewhere between 6 and 7% in the next 2 to 3 years, given that growth is always going to come back. So that's the long-term view on interest rates. So when we are talking about, our traditional funds, we are talking about the guaranteed products, we are not worried about the current rates. We are actually more worried about future rates. And as I said, we do believe that ultimately in the long term, interest rates will trend somewhere between 6 to 8% as far as India is concerned. So that's a little bit of a comfort that you might want to give to yourself and the customers, that the kind of bonuses, etc., that we are expecting are likely to be delivered because of the inherent structural qualities of India, so to say. So that was a little bit on the long-term asset allocation for equities and fixed income. Let me talk a little bit about the current situation. Current situation, let's break it up into the pre-pandemic. What was happening is that globally, while 2018-19 were a bit slow, India was out, and the global economy was beginning to look like it was accelerating. So if you look at the numbers of November 2019 till Jan-Feb 2020, it was looking like that from the low 60% growth, India was coming back to somewhere between 6.5 to 7% growth by FY 21-22. And similarly, the US had slowed down a bit in 18-19, but the US and the European economies were coming back to a higher rate than before. So it was looking like a cyclical upturn. The pandemic events put a massive break to it. So, suddenly the world was faced with a situation which it had never, it hadn't seen in 100 years almost. And because the only solution to the pandemic was social distancing, there was no choice but to stop economic activity. Now, normally what happens in a normal business cycle, you see acceleration, then you see tapering off, and then you see a slowdown, and the cycle continues. Then again, it goes down. But this was a hard break. Suddenly, you had to stop everything. People had to stop traveling. You had to shut factories. You had to shut malls. You had to shut transport. Everything basically had to be shut. So there was this huge, break that the global economy got in February, March. There were lockdowns pretty much in most of the countries everywhere. So the global GDP suddenly contracted. We haven't gotten the full data yet, but looks like the global economy might contract by as much as 10 to 15% for the March quarter, and probably a little lesser for the June quarter. So that was a huge shock, and a lot of businesses, of course, will come under stress, have come under stress. Unemployment happens because businesses are not getting business. They have to shut down, or salary cuts, or lay off people for a while. So in response to that, good thing is that the global central banks like the Federal Reserve in the US, the European Central Bank, RBI, Bank of Japan, Chinese Central Bank, all of them have kind of seen this, not this bad, but volatility in 2008. We saw volatility in the big crash of 2000 post-bar. So there was some kind of a manual already available. You just had to scale it up by 2 or 3 times. So the stimulus measures that you used for, say, 2008, probably you need to ratchet up by 2 or 3 times. The kind of liquidity that you pumped into the global economy in 2008-9, again, you have to ratchet up by 4 or 5 times to because the shock is much bigger. But the good thing is that broadly, the tools were known how to tackle the situation. So very rapidly, most of the developed world, the US, Europe, Japan, China, Singapore, they just opened the floodgates of fiscal stimulus. Countries like US have done almost a 10% stimulus, Japan 10%. There are countries which have done even 15% of fiscal stimulus in a short period of time. So when the economy was contracting in March, April by almost 10 to 15 to 20% in some cases, it was immediately, by April, May, governments had already started putting money into the hand of the consumer to just basically make sure that the shock is basically matched equally or more by steroids. So fiscal is on one side, and then of course there were aggressive rate cuts. The equity markets, the bond markets globally were in a panic. So the Federal Reserve said, if the bond markets are in a panic, we'll come and buy bonds also. So they started buying bonds, something that they haven't done in a long time. They not only bought treasury bonds, but they also started buying corporate bonds. So basically, huge amount of liquidity was pumped into the global economy. To put things in perspective, the kind of liquidity that was pumped in just 2 months of March, April, May, 3 months of March, April, May, was more than the kind of liquidity that they had done in 4 years from 2009 to 2013. So that's the kind of massive response that we have seen. And the reason why the markets globally, including Indian stock markets, turned around so fast is not because companies started making more profits, is because the huge crash, which was discounting a lot of negatives, it was discounting or maybe estimating that the world economy will not recover even in 2 or 3 years. That was the kind of panic. It was undone, and basically the governments and the Federal Reserve and the central bank said that we are here. We'll make sure that whatever is required to get the economies back on track will be done. In India also, we did the same thing. We cut interest rates. RBI has been dovish, but we have less ammunition in terms of fiscal because our currency is not the dollar. We can't print rupees like they can print dollars. But even in India, they've announced this package of 1 to 2%. And my guess is that once the lockdown situation improves a little bit, this fiscal stimulus may start coming. They might thinking of further stimulus of 1 to 2% in August and September. That's the expectation. So essentially, the there was a bad event. It was a gut-wrenching event, but it was more than matched by the kind of measures taken by the governments and central banks globally, and that's the reason why the markets have turned around quite a bit. Now that the markets have stabilized, broadly speaking, I think there will be some consolidation. The markets may not go too far, because ultimately the pain is still there. It's just that we have kind of given a buffer. So now we'll have slowly businesses coming back on track from a, say, a demand situation where there was a minus 40%, minus 50% demand. You'll come back to minus 20, minus 10 and 0, and then start growing in the next 2 to 3 quarters. So I think by the end of 2020 or early 2021, we'll start to see the numbers or the demand numbers which are equal to last year. So while for the fiscal year FY 2021, we'll see a contraction in the economy, but that's, I think, already known. By FY 22 for the next year, it looks like you might go back to 6 to 7% growth. In the meantime, of course, thankfully the markets have stabilized and we are now in a literally more normal situation. But we are closely observing the situation and are going to kind of respond accordingly as and when required. So that's a little bit on the markets and the economy. I think what's more important is that given the liquidity conditions which are likely to remain loose, in the short term, in the next 6 to 12 months, it looks like interest rates will remain low. And as I said, the common question that we get is, how are you going to manage the portfolio? The good thing is that for us, we have a very huge traditional fund of almost 40,000 crores. So, and this existing corpus, of course, is going to keep growing as you get future premiums and the income from the current portfolio. It's already locked in at certain attractive rates. So it takes time for the overall portfolio yield to start coming down. And that only happens if the interest rates go down and stay down for a very long time. And as I showed you, over a long period of time, it doesn't stay down for a very long time, given the growth and inflation that is prevalent in India. But in the shorter term, in the next few months or 1 year or so, I think what is important is whether we are able to continue to guarantee those rates. And we do believe that, yes, we are going to be able to continue to guarantee those rates, which we have committed to customers, because it's, as I said, asset liability management is the primary aim. We will not launch a product, we will not sell a product until it's making reasonable money for everything, until it's profitable. So I don't think we in our guaranteed products also, we need to worry about anything. She already touched upon the financials of the company. Our solvency ratios are very, very strong, much more than the statutory requirements. And as an internal policy, we always keep solvency margins and solvency ratios which are much higher than the minimum required. So you don't need to worry about that. And the guaranteed products are actually self-contained for us. We do not take any credit risk. We do not take any interest rate risk. So we were amongst the first insurance companies to start hedging our portfolio using long-term derivatives. Banks are counterparties to us. They were not willing to write very long-term guarantees. So we actually worked with a few of the big banks, the safe banks, to tell them that, look, we have a ALM requirement, and you can also, you have a reverse ALM requirement. So why don't you write derivatives for us, so that the GIPs and the guaranteed products that we have are actually hedged completely, so that even future cash flows, I mentioned, today's premium I can invest at today's interest rates and it may be attractive. But what if the future cash flows, when they come, interest rates are low? So that future cash flow hedging is what we are doing. So banks actually underwrite to us that even the future cash flows, you will be able to invest at rates which are predetermined now. So if the bond yield today is 6%, the bank will write us a guarantee that even the future cash flows, you will be able to lock in at a certain rate. May not be 6%, maybe a little above, little higher, but broadly we know exactly what rates we are going to invest, even the future cash flows that we get. And those, of course, at the end of the policy are generating more than adequate return to meet all the liabilities. So in the non-par guaranteed products, I think we have nothing to worry about. We should keep selling them. And the key message is that since currently interest rates are down, because we already have locked in yields, the relative attractiveness of the guaranteed products are actually much better than what they used to be. So that's one more point that you might want to keep in mind while you're selling these products. So I think with that, I think I've taken enough time and given you a very broad overview of what we stand for, how we are managing our money, our investment philosophy, and I'm happy to kind of keep the floor the floor open.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ayaz. Thank you, Shiv.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Meher.
Thank you so much, Mir. That was a very, very insightful session, and I'm glad that we had this conversation with you. And I'm pretty sure that all our team members, our family of agent advisors, would go back with some really enriched information, data points, and a lot of confidence when they go back and talk to their customers. So thank you so much for doing this, Mir. Now we come to the more exciting part of the conversation, of the session, where we will be having a few questions that we have taken in during the registration phase from all our agent advisors. And we will be now having a conversation between Shiv and Mihir, where Shiv would be taking up those 5 to 6 questions that we have had. And he's going to ask Mihir about what does he think about it and what's his point of view on those very interesting questions posted by our agent advisors family. So over to you, Shiv.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayaz. Thank you, Meher. As we expected, it was quite insightful. And within the given time, I think you touched on the right things. Gives us confidence that, you are looking at our company's investments are being managed in a very, very nice manner. There are a few questions which have come up, Meher. They are of, variety, different topics. One of the question is that, and this is a majority of agents have written this, that we have a big power portfolio. You touched about it, 40,000 crores. You also gave part of the answer that already this investment is made in instruments which are, we have already locked in. But people are still asking that because of COVID, do you fear a downward risk on our ability to maintain the bonuses that we have been giving to our customers? Or some people have also asked that, is there anything that you are thinking to, give increase our returns, compared to other players? So your response, please.
Sure. So, as I said, we run our products like a bank. So ALM is one keyword or one abbreviation that every one of us should completely be familiar with: asset liability management. A bank does it, and insurance companies do it, and Max Life does it better than anybody else. So as I said, whether it's a guaranteed product or a participating product, any product that we sell is not sold till we have done the ALM for that product in advance. So my assumptions of future premium being invested at a certain rate are absolutely robust to work with. So there is very little chance that a policy which has a certain illustration given today will not generate that illustration over the next 20, 30 years. Because remember, you and I may not be there for the next 40 years, but the policy is still there. So the institution is what is working, not Mihir Vora or Shiv Maheshwari. It's the institutional processes and systems that we have set for the investments function, for the actuarial functions, for the product function. So investments, the product design, and the actuary work very close together. Every month, we take these 30, 40 lakh policies that we have. We project the cash flows of that. The cash flows take into account what interest rates are there currently, what interest rates will be there in the future, what are the mortality rates which are likely to happen, what are the mortality payouts every year for the next 40 years. Everything is precisely mapped out. We run a ALM, and basically when we start getting the cash flows next month and month after month, we invest in line with that ALM. So it's a very sophisticated process. As I said, we do not take credit risks. So it's basically invested in very safe government bonds, very safe, corporate AAA bonds. And a small portion is invested, as I said, for the long-term kicker that we get in equities. But even if equities don't make returns for 5 years or 10 years, we are still building in enough buffer in our calculations to make sure that the long-term outflows are matched. The other piece, again, I would like to highlight is that for our guaranteed products, we are hedging not only the current cash flows, but the future cash flows. So when you have a pay 10 GIP, you know, we have a contract with a very safe bank, like let's say SBI or ICICI or one of HDFC. We have a contract which basically promises us that the premium that we received in year 2, year 3, even the premium that we received in 2027, I know exactly what rate that premium is going to get invested in. So I have eliminated that interest rate risk also. So I'm not taking any credit risk. I'm not taking any interest rate risk because my future cash flows are also known to me. My future interest rates are also known to me because of the derivatives. And as I said, we were the first insurance company to start hedging this way. If you don't hedge, then you are taking a risk on your balance sheet, on the company's balance sheet, on Max Life Insurance's balance sheet. But by going into this derivative contract, we're actually removing risk for the customer and we are removing risk for the company also. So it's a win-win situation for us. So I can, give enough assurance to people that it's run completely safe, and we are not only taking we are not only not taking credit risk, but we are not even taking any interest rate risk also, especially in the guaranteed products. I think you're on mute, Shiv.
You've covered the second question also, which is a lot of people wrote to us that how will we ensure that the AWPs that we are selling, which has got 8 pay, 10 pay, will be able to maintain guarantees. So you've answered that. Thank you very much for that. There's a question on a lot of people are saying that is it a right time to advise customers to go for ULIPs? Okay. Now, you explained in the very beginning that over the last 20 years, Nifty has steadily grown. And despite the blips, it almost followed the pattern of the corporate profits. But what would you like to say once again, maybe to our advisors, if some customer asks them that, is buying ULIP at this point in time a right thing? Consider the fact, Mihir, that our ULIPs are at least 10 years. There's no short-term ULIP that we sell, at least 10 years. So your inputs, please.
Sure. So ULIPs is an investments product broadly, right? The function of ULIPs is basically to give you that extra return.
Yeah.
So ULIPs should be looked at only after you are done with your protection, after you are done with your retirement planning, your education and marriage and all that planning is done. Then the extracurricular that you want to make sure that you have a lifestyle which is much more sustainable and much more better after you say retire is what you should put into the riskier asset classes. So that's the way I would look at it. So once you're done with your protection and your guarantees and your participating basically to plan for your events, life events, then the additional money, then you can start looking at the ULIPs. It can't be a substitute for your other traditional products.
Absolutely. There, Mayor, we launched a deferred annuity plan a few months back, and we are also seeing a trend in the market that a lot of customers, because of this uncertainty, now are trying to bring in some certainty about their retirement. Keep aside some money for regular income. What is your advice to our advisors on how do you believe customers can invest in a balanced way for their retirement? Through Max Life, of course, we have got products, but people are asking an overall view of long-term retirement planning. So would you like to suggest something?
Yeah, so because of the inherent structure of the product, it takes care of a lot of the points that I mentioned. Are you done with your life stage planning? Are you done with your lifestyle planning, so to say? So I think this product has inherent features which automatically rebalances and make sure that you are at any point in time invested in line with your current life stage. To that extent, it's a all-in-one solution, I would say.
Good. Ayaz, any further questions that you've got? There was one more question. Do you think a life insurance company is better equipped to manage long-term guarantees? I think you've already answered that.
Yes.
This question that are we equipped to manage?
It's only life insurance companies who can do that because mutual funds can't guarantee anything.
Bilkul. Yeah. So
Yeah.
largely these are the questions. There are some questions which are relating to product, which we will answer separately. So what we will do to all my agent advisors, what we will do is we made a note of all your questions. Mihir has answered them. Still, we will come back to you with answer to all the questions in writing, so that you can go through them once again. You can refer to them on a after some days also, and you are better able to address the customers any concerns or questions. We have largely, most questions are coming of similar kind here, so you've answered them. So with that, I think I would like to thank you for the time that you have given. And I can see on the chat many people are very, very appreciative of this session and the information that we have given to them. uh, Thank you, Ayaz, for organizing this session, and to all our advisors for coming. We will keep doing such sessions with you. We will keep getting people who will give you both understanding and insight that you can use in a sales situation or in a service situation. We'll keep doing that. Thank you for coming and attending this session. Ayaz, over to you from our side.
Thank you so much, Shiv, for the lovely words. And once again, Mihir, it's always a pleasure to have you amongst us. And thank you so much for sparing time from a very busy schedule to come and have a conversation with all of us. And
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
so much,
everyone,
Mihir.
and all the best, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Mihir. And thank you so much to our agent advisor family to spare time and come and have a conversation with all of us. This was the second edition of the Go Digital seminar and webinar that we keep having. And there is lots more to come. So keep tuned and stay tuned. We'll come back with more such sessions. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care.